The champagne glass felt heavy in my hand as I watched Marcus slide that navy velvet box across the white tablecloth. 5 years together, and this was supposed to be our moment. The restaurant was perfect, one of those places in downtown Seattle where they dim the lights just enough to make everyone look better than they actually are. He'd chosen the corner table by the window, city lights twinkling behind us like something out of a movie I'd watched too many times. But something was off about his smile, the way his eyes kept darting around the room instead of meeting mine. My stomach twisted as he leaned back in his chair, that expensive watch catching the candlelight. The Cartier I'd bought him last Christmas when he said he needed something professional for job interviews that never seemed to happen. "Listen, Sophia," he started, and I knew right then this wasn't going the way I'd imagined. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our future." He pushed the box closer to me, but didn't open it. "I want to marry you, I really do, but I need something first." The couple at the next table was laughing about something, their happiness making the air around us feel heavier. I set down my glass carefully, afraid I might drop it. "What do you mean?" "I need freedom to explore." The words hung between us like smoke. "There are so many beautiful women out there, experiences I haven't had. I love you, but I'm 32, and I feel like I've been missing out on life." The room seemed to tilt slightly. 5 years of my life sitting across from me in a designer shirt I'd bought, telling me I wasn't enough. The waiter appeared, asking if we needed anything, and I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. What I needed wasn't on any menu. "You're asking for an open relationship?" My voice sounded strange, like it was coming from someone else. Marcus's face lit up like I'd just given him the best gift. "Yes. See, I knew you'd understand. You're so evolved, Sophia. This is why I love you." He reached across the table to grab my hand, his palm slightly sweaty. "Think about it. We can both explore, both grow. It'll make us stronger." Here's what Marcus didn't know, what I'd kept hidden for 5 entire years. He wasn't attractive. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the truth I'd been dancing around since our first date. He had this way of walking like he thought he was in a cologne commercial, this swagger that didn't match his receding hairline or the way his stomach pushed against his shirts. But the real secret, the one that would have destroyed him if he knew, was about his anatomy. Let's just say that when he talked about exploring with other women, I wondered if they'd need a magnifying glass to find what he was offering. But I'd spent 5 years building him up, telling him he was incredible, that size didn't matter, that he was the best I'd ever had. My therapist would later call it my need to nurture, to fix broken things. My mom would call it stupidity. They were both probably right. "You know what?" I heard myself saying, watching his eager face. "You're absolutely right. We should definitely do this." His whole body relaxed, and he actually had the audacity to start scanning the room, his eyes lingering on our waitress as she bent to clear another table. "God, this is why you're perfect. My buddy Derek said you'd freak out, but I told him you were different." Different. 5 years of paying 70% of our rent because he was between opportunities. 5 years of buying his clothes, his groceries, funding his gym membership that he used maybe twice a month. 5 years of listening to him complain about jobs that were beneath him while he spent his days playing video games and sending out maybe 1 resume a week. And I was different. The ring box sat between us, still closed. He hadn't even bothered to show me what was inside. Later, I'd find out it was a simple band, probably the cheapest thing in the store. But that night, I didn't care about the ring. I was already planning something much more interesting. Within days, Marcus transformed into someone I'd never seen before. He bought new cologne, several bottles that he charged to credit cards I'm sure were maxed out. He started going to the gym every day, grunting through workouts while taking selfies in the mirror. He downloaded every dating app possible and took to sitting next to me on our couch, swiping through profiles while providing commentary. "Look at this one," he'd say, shoving his phone in my face. "Jessica, 26, yoga instructor. She already matched with me." He'd pause, waiting for my reaction. "You should try too. I mean, if you want." Though honestly, it might be harder for women your age. I was 31. I'd nod and smile, making dinner in our kitchen while he scheduled dates. What he didn't see were the text messages I was getting from his family, checking in on me, making sure I was okay. His mother, Linda, had always been particularly kind, treating me more like a daughter than Marcus treated me like a partner. "You're still coming to the barbecue next weekend, aren't you?" she texted one evening while Marcus was in the bathroom getting ready for another date. "James specifically asked if you'd be there." James, Marcus's older brother. The successful one, as Marcus liked to say with barely concealed resentment. The one who had his life together, who paid his own bills, who looked at me during family dinners with something I'd started to recognize as concern. "I wouldn't miss it," I typed back, and I meant every word. Marcus's dating adventures weren't going well, though he'd never admit it. He'd leave the apartment at 8, chest puffed out, drowning in cologne, and be back by 10 looking deflated. The first Thursday, he came home with red eyes, mumbling something about the girl having an emergency. The second Thursday, he was back even earlier, claiming the restaurant had given him food poisoning even though he clearly hadn't eaten. "These apps are full of flakes," he muttered one night, throwing himself on the couch. "They don't appreciate what they could have." I made sympathetic noises while folding laundry, his laundry that he still expected me to do even though we were supposedly exploring our freedom. The irony wasn't lost on me that he wanted independence in every way, except the ones that required actual work. The family barbecue arrived on a perfect Saturday afternoon. Marcus almost didn't go, claiming he had a lunch date with someone named Amber, but when that mysteriously fell through, he grudgingly agreed to come along. His family lived in a beautiful craftsman house in Bellevue, the kind with a wraparound porch and a garden Linda tended herself. I wore a sundress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, one that made me feel confident in a way I hadn't in years. Marcus didn't notice, too busy texting someone who was probably ghosting him. But James noticed. He was manning the grill when we arrived, and his face broke into that genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Sophia," he said, setting down the spatula to give me a proper hug. "I'm glad you came." He smelled like charcoal and something clean, like he'd actually showered instead of just drowning himself in body spray. Over his shoulder, I could see Marcus already heading inside, probably to raid the beer cooler and complain to whoever would listen. "How are you holding up?" James asked, his voice lower now, meant just for me. "Mom told me about the arrangement." I stepped closer to the grill, letting the smoke hide whatever was showing on my face. "Actually, I'm doing great." Marcus wanted freedom, and I'm just taking the same deal. Something shifted in his expression, understanding maybe, or was it hope? "Good for you," he said simply. "You deserve to be happy." We talked for the next hour, really talked, about things that mattered. His work in architecture, my job in marketing that I'd been promoted in twice while Marcus figured himself out. He asked about my family back in Portland, remembered that my sister had just had a baby. When was the last time Marcus had asked about my sister? When was the last time he'd asked about anything that wasn't directly related to him? Linda found us there, her eyes moving between us with the kind of maternal intuition that misses nothing. She hugged me tight, whispering in my ear, "I always thought you were too good for him anyway." The rest of the barbecue passed in a blur of potato salad and family stories. Marcus sulked in a lawn chair, his phone battery dead from constant checking. He kept shooting looks at James and me, his jaw tightening every time we laughed. His cousin asked about our engagement, and Marcus launched into a speech about modern relationships and how evolved we were, while I caught James rolling his eyes behind his beer bottle. As the sun started setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, James walked me to my car. Marcus had already stormed off to wait in the passenger seat, claiming he had a headache. "I meant what I said earlier," James said, his hands in his pockets like he was keeping them from reaching for me. "You deserve to be happy, and if this whole open relationship thing means I finally get to—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Sorry, that's not fair." "No," I said quickly. "What were you going to say?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt more seen in that moment than I had in 5 years. "I was going to say that if this means I finally get to ask you out, then maybe Marcus did us both a favor." My heart was racing as I gave him my number, my real number, not the Google voice one I'd been giving to creeps at the gym. Marcus couldn't see us from where he was sitting, probably for the best. I didn't want to deal with his tantrum just yet. That night, Marcus was unusually quiet. He sat on his side of the bed scrolling through his phone, the light casting shadows on his face. My mom likes you better than me, he said suddenly. That's not true, I lied. James was all over you today. His voice had that edge to it, the one that usually preceded a fight about something stupid. It was embarrassing. We were just talking. Right. He turned off his phone with more force than necessary. Just remember, I'm the one who opened this relationship. I'm the one who's evolved. You're just following my lead. I stared at the ceiling in the dark, thinking about the text James had sent me on the drive home. Would Saturday work for dinner? There's this Italian place I've been wanting to try. Simple, direct, respectful. Everything Marcus wasn't. Actually, I said into the darkness, I have a date on Saturday. The silence was deafening. Then, oh, okay. Cool. With who? Does it matter? I thought we weren't doing restrictions. He didn't answer, but I could feel him seething beside me. The bed had never felt bigger. Saturday arrived with the kind of nervous energy I hadn't felt since college. I spent too long getting ready, changing outfits 3 times before settling on a black dress that made me feel like myself. Marcus had been weird all week, alternating between acting like he didn't care and interrogating me about my plans. Where are you going? He stood in the doorway of our bedroom as I put on lipstick. Dinner. Yeah, but where? And with who? His voice was climbing higher. Is it someone from work? That guy from your gym? I turned to face him, taking in his stained t-shirt and basketball shorts. When was the last time he'd made an effort for me? I'm going to Bella Roma. With James. The color drained from his face so fast I thought he might faint. James? My brother James? Is there another one? You can't... That's not... I didn't mean family. He was actually sputtering, his hands waving like he was trying to physically grab the words. That's completely different. How? I picked up my purse, checking that I had everything. You said anyone, no restrictions. You said we needed to explore, to grow. I'm just doing what you wanted. Not with my brother. Why not? He's single. I'm in an open relationship. I don't see the problem. I moved past him toward the door. Don't wait up. Sophia, I'm serious. This isn't funny anymore. I paused at the front door looking back at him. 5 years I'd given this man. 5 years of building him up, paying his way, pretending he was something he wasn't. You're right, I said. It's not funny. It never was. James was waiting outside the restaurant, looking like everything Marcus pretended to be. He'd chosen a table by the window, but unlike his brother, he pulled out my chair and actually looked at me when we talked. We ordered wine and appetizers, and I found myself laughing, really laughing for the first time in months. I have a confession, he said over our main course. I've wanted to ask you out for years, but you were with Marcus, and despite everything, he's still my brother. What changed? He did. Or maybe I just finally saw what everyone else could see. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You've been carrying him for years, Sophia. We all knew it. Mom, Dad, me. We just didn't know how to say anything without making it worse. I took a sip of wine to hide the tears threatening to form. I thought I was helping him. I thought if I just supported him enough, he'd become the person he could be. You can't love someone into being better, James said gently. They have to want it themselves. We talked until the restaurant was nearly empty, the staff politely hovering near our table. He told me about the house he was designing, his plans to start his own firm. I told him about the promotion I'd been offered, the one I'd been hesitating to take because it would mean longer hours, and Marcus had complained about me already working too much. Take it, he said immediately. God, Sophia, take it. You've put your life on hold long enough. Outside the restaurant, he walked me to my car, our steps slow like we were both trying to make the evening last. I know this is complicated, he said. With Marcus, with the family, if you want to just leave it at dinner, I understand. I thought about going home to Marcus, to his sulking and manipulation, to another night of pretending everything was fine. Then I looked at James, at the way he was giving me a choice, a real choice, not an ultimatum disguised as evolution. I'd like to see you again, I said, and meant it. He smiled, that genuine smile that reached his eyes. I'd like that too. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years, but that feeling evaporated the moment I walked through our apartment door. Marcus was waiting in the living room, the lights off except for the TV playing some show he wasn't watching. "How was it?" His voice was flat, dangerous. "It was nice?" "Nice?" He stood up, and I could smell the beer from across the room. "You went on a date with my brother and it was nice?" "Marcus, you're drunk." "I'm not drunk. I'm betrayed." He was yelling now, his face red. "My own brother. My own girlfriend." "Open relationship, remember? Your idea?" "I didn't mean him. I meant strangers, people who don't matter." "So the women you've been seeing don't matter?" He faltered at that, his anger shifting to something else. "That's different. None of them. They don't want me anyway. They all ghost me or make excuses. But you had to pick him. Perfect James with his perfect job and his perfect everything." "This isn't about James," I said, exhausted suddenly. "This is about us. About how you wanted to have your cake and eat it too, and now you're upset that I took a bite." "Don't get smart with me," he snarled. "I know what you're doing. You're trying to hurt me, to get back at me for suggesting this." "No, Marcus, I'm trying to be happy, something you haven't cared about in a very long time." I went to bed alone that night, Marcus choosing to sleep on the couch in protest, but I could hear him there, typing furiously on his phone, probably telling his side of the story to anyone who would listen. I didn't care anymore. I was done caring. The next few weeks were a study in contrasts. Marcus threw himself into dating with renewed energy like he had something to prove. He'd come home late, making sure I knew he'd been out, leaving receipts on the counter from restaurants he couldn't afford, but the bravado was thin. I'd hear him on the phone with his friends, complaining about the dating scene, how women were too picky, how they didn't appreciate nice guys. Meanwhile, I was discovering what it felt like to date someone who actually liked me. James and I would meet for coffee before work, text throughout the day, have dinner when we could. He remembered things I told him, asked about my presentations at work, sent me articles about things I was interested in. It was basic human decency, but after 5 years of emotional starvation, it felt like a feast. "I can't do this anymore," Marcus announced one night, 3 weeks after that first date with James. He stood in our bedroom doorway while I folded laundry, his dramatic timing impeccable as always. "This open relationship thing, it's not working." I continued folding, not trusting myself to look at him. "Not working how?" "It's just not what I thought it would be. I think we should close it." "That's interesting." I set down the shirt I was holding, his shirt that I was still washing like an idiot. "And what about what I want?" "Come on, Sophia. You've made your point. You got me back for suggesting it. Can we just move on?" "Got you back?" I finally looked at him, really looked at him. Unshaven, wearing the same clothes as yesterday, his phone clutched in his hand like a lifeline. "You think this is about revenge?" "Isn't it? Dating my brother? Making sure everyone knows about it? I haven't told anyone anything. Unlike you, I don't need to broadcast my personal life to feel validated." His face twisted into something ugly. "Just end it with James. Tell him it was a mistake." "No." The word hung between us, simple and final. He stared at me like I'd slapped him. "What do you mean, no?" "I mean no. You opened this relationship, Marcus. You don't get to close it just because you're not getting what you want. This is my family. And you should have thought about that before you decided you needed to explore all those beautiful women out there." He stepped into the room, and something in his posture made me take a step back. "I'm not asking, Sophia, I'm telling you. End it with James, or we're done." I looked at this man I'd wasted 5 years on, who was now trying to threaten me with the loss of something I'd already grieved. "Then I guess we're done." The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of finality. He seemed to deflate, the anger rushing out of him like air from a punctured balloon. "You don't mean that." "I need you to move out." The words came easier than I'd expected. "You've got 30 days to find somewhere else." "I can't afford my own place." "You know that." That sounds like a you problem, Marcus. Maybe one of those beautiful women you've been exploring with has a couch you can crash on. He left the room then, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the pictures on the wall. One fell, the frame cracking. It was a photo from our trip to Hawaii 2 years ago, the one I'd paid for entirely while he promised to pay me back when he got his next job. I picked it up and dropped it in the trash, frame and all. My phone buzzed, James asking if I was okay. He'd seen Marcus's Instagram story, some cryptic post about betrayal and family loyalty. I called him instead of texting, needing to hear his voice. "Want me to come over?" he asked after I'd explained what happened. "No, it's okay. I don't want to make things worse." "Sophia." His voice was gentle but firm. "Things can't get much worse, and you shouldn't have to deal with this alone." But I did need to deal with it alone, at least for now. This was my mess to clean up, my 5-year mistake to untangle. I told him I'd see him tomorrow and spent the rest of the night making lists, things to separate, bills to change over, logistics to figure out. It was easier to focus on the practical than to think about how I'd wasted so much time on someone who saw me as nothing more than a wallet and a safety net. The next morning, I woke to find Marcus already gone, his pillow thrown dramatically on the floor. I made coffee in peaceful silence, sent emails from my laptop without anyone asking when I'd be done. It was a small taste of what life could be like, and I wanted more of it. At work, I walked straight into my boss's office and accepted the promotion I'd been putting off. Miranda smiled like she'd been waiting for this moment. "It's about time," she said. "I was starting to think you were going to let that boyfriend of yours hold you back forever." "Ex-boyfriend," I corrected, and the word tasted like freedom. "Even better. When can you start?" I threw myself into work that week, staying late to prepare for my new role, using the excuse to avoid going home to Marcus's sulking presence. He'd taken to leaving passive-aggressive notes around the apartment. "Your turn to buy toilet paper, unless that's too much commitment. Dishes have been in the sink for 2 days, but I guess you're too busy with your new life to notice." I started looking at apartments online, calculating what I could afford on my new salary. The numbers were promising. Without Marcus draining my bank account, I could actually save money, maybe even buy something of my own eventually. The thought was intoxicating. James and I met for dinner that Thursday at a small Thai place near his office. He looked tired, and I soon learned why. "Marcus has been calling me nonstop," he said, pushing pad thai around his plate, leaving voicemails, sending texts. "He even showed up at my work yesterday." God, I'm so sorry. "Don't apologize for him. You've been doing that for too long already." He reached across the table to take my hand. "I just wanted you to know, in case he tries to escalate things." "What's he saying?" James pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "That I betrayed him, that I've always been jealous, that I'm taking advantage of you while you're vulnerable." He looked up. "That last one really pisses me off, as if you're not capable of making your own choices." I squeezed his hand, feeling a surge of gratitude for this man who saw me as a whole person, not just a supporting character in his story. "What are you telling him?" "Nothing. I'm not engaging." He put his phone away. "My mom, on the other hand, is fully engaged. She told him to grow up and that he had no one to blame but himself." Linda said that? "Oh, she's just getting started. She also told him that maybe if he'd gotten a job and treated you properly, none of this would have happened." James smiled ruefully. "Family dinners are going to be interesting for a while." We talked about lighter things after that, making plans for the weekend, discussing a new restaurant that had opened downtown. It was easy, comfortable in a way that made me realize how hard things with Marcus had always been. Every conversation with him had been like navigating a minefield, never knowing what would set him off or turn into a complaint about his circumstances. When I got home that night, the apartment was dark. I found Marcus in our bedroom, sitting on the bed with a box of my things. "Going through my stuff now?" I asked from the doorway. He looked up, and I was startled to see he'd been crying. "Remember this." He held up a ticket stub from a concert we'd gone to 3 years ago. "You said it was the best night of your life." "Marcus?" "And this." He pulled out a dried flower from a Valentine's bouquet. "I saved it because you said you wanted to keep it forever." What are you doing? I'm trying to remind you of what we had. What we could still have if you just stopped this insanity with James. I walked over and took the box from him, setting it aside. Those are nice memories, Marcus, but they're not enough to build a life on. You can't live in the past while refusing to build a future. I've been trying. Have you? Really? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been coasting for 5 years, letting me carry the weight while you figured yourself out. And when I finally started living my own life, you couldn't handle it. He stood abruptly, anger replacing the sadness. You changed the rules. No, you did. You're just mad that I'm better at the game you wanted to play. The truth of it hung in the air between us. He'd wanted to feel desired, to prove he could have anyone he wanted, but the reality was that he couldn't, and watching me move on so easily with someone he'd always felt inferior to was more than his ego could take. I'll crash at Derek's for a while, he said finally, but this isn't over. And when you realize what a mistake you're making with my brother, don't expect me to take you back. I almost laughed. The audacity of thinking I'd want him back, that this was some temporary rebellion instead of a permanent awakening. But I just nodded, letting him have his exit line. He packed a bag with theatrical size, making sure I saw him take the watch, the cologne, all the things I'd bought him over the years. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in the blessed silence. My phone rang, my sister Sarah calling from Portland. "Finally," she said when I answered. "I've been dying to talk to you. Mom said Marcus moved out?" News travels fast. Are you kidding? Mom's been waiting for this for years. She's practically planning a party. Sarah paused. So it's true about the brother? I took a sip of wine. It's true. Holy shit, Sophia, that's kind of amazing. I mean, Marcus must be losing his mind. That's one way to put it. We talked for an hour, Sarah filling me in on the baby's latest milestones, her husband's new job, normal life things that I'd been too wrapped up in Marcus's drama to properly engage with. She invited me to visit, said the guest room was always ready. "You sound different," she said before we hung up. "Lighter? Like yourself again." "I feel like myself again." "Good. It's about time. And Sophia, I'm proud of you. I know how hard it is to leave, even when everyone else can see it's the right thing." After we hung up, I did something I hadn't done in years. I danced around my living room to music Marcus hated, drank wine straight from the bottle and didn't clean up the dishes until the next morning. It was a small rebellion, but it felt monumental. The next few weeks passed in a blur of logistics and revelations. I found an apartment in Queen Anne, a one-bedroom with actual windows and a landlord who didn't ask why a woman my age was renting alone. James helped me move, bringing his truck and several friends who made quick work of it. Marcus had cleared out most of his things while I was at work, leaving passive-aggressive gaps where his presence used to be. "It's perfect," James said, setting down a box in what would be my home office. "Great light for working from home." "I can actually afford it," I said, still marveling at the concept. "Without him draining my bank account, I can actually save money." That promotion didn't hurt either. He pulled me into a hug. "I'm proud of you." I leaned into him, breathing in that clean scent that was so different from Marcus's aggressive cologne collection. "Your family must think I'm terrible." "Are you kidding? Mom's already planning Thanksgiving and making sure to set your place far from Marcus's." He pulled back to look at me. "Although he might not show up. He's been telling everyone he's too busy with his new job to commit to family things." "He got a job?" "Supposedly. Working for Uncle Tony's construction company. We'll see how long it lasts." We christened the apartment with takeout from my favorite Indian place, sitting on the floor because my furniture wouldn't arrive until tomorrow. It was perfect in its imperfection, this new beginning that was entirely mine. "I've been thinking," James said, wiping curry from his chin. "Maybe we should cool things down for a bit. Give you time to settle in, figure out what you want without the complication of dating your ex's brother." I set down my container, studying his face. He was serious, offering me an out I hadn't asked for. "Is that what you want?" "No," he admitted. "But I want you to choose me because you want to, not because you're rebelling against Marcus or trying to prove a point." "James." I moved closer to him. I need you to understand something. Yes, this started because of Marcus's stupid open relationship idea, but staying, that's about you. About how you make me laugh, how you actually listen when I talk, how you've never once made me feel like I need to make myself smaller to make you feel bigger. He kissed me then, there on the floor of my empty apartment, and it was nothing like the desperate, performative kisses Marcus used to give me in public to mark his territory. This was just for us, gentle and sure and full of possibility. "Okay," he said when we broke apart. "But promise me something. If it ever stops being about us, if it starts being about him again, you'll tell me." "I promise." We spent the rest of the evening planning where furniture would go, discussing paint colors, imagining a future that had nothing to do with Marcus and everything to do with building something real. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. My first night alone in the new apartment, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was sad or scared, but because the possibility of it all was overwhelming. I could paint the walls any color I wanted. I could come home late without explaining myself. I could spend my money on things I actually needed instead of subsidizing someone else's dreams. I thought about the girl I'd been 5 years ago, so eager to prove I could love someone into being better. I wanted to go back and shake her, tell her that love wasn't supposed to be that hard, that the right person would add to her life instead of constantly subtracting from it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Hi, this is awkward, but I think you should know. I went out with Marcus last week, and he spent the entire time talking about his ex, who ruined his life by sleeping with his brother. When I tried to leave, he asked me to cover the bill because his credit card was declined. Just thought you should know what he's saying about you. Also, he's definitely not over you. Jenna." I screenshot the message, adding it to a folder I'd started labeled Evidence. Not because I needed proof that leaving was the right choice, but because sometimes, on weekdays, I might need reminders of why going back would be wrong. The next morning brought a call from Linda. "Honey, I'm sorry to bother you, but have you heard from Marcus? He was supposed to start work with Tony on Monday, but never showed up." "We're not really in contact right now, Linda. Of course, I'm sorry. I just worry about him." She paused. "How are you doing?" "James says the new apartment is lovely." "I'm doing really well, actually. The best I've been in years." "Good. That's really good to hear." Her voice was warm. "You know, Sophia, I owe you an apology. I watched him take advantage of you for years, and I should have said something. I kept hoping he'd grow out of it, that he'd see what he had before he lost it." "It's not your fault, Linda. Marcus is a grown man who made his own choices. Still, you deserved better. I'm glad you're finally getting it, even if it's complicated with it being James and all." We talked for a few more minutes about lighter things, and she extracted a promise that I'd still come to family dinners when I felt comfortable. The grace of it, the acknowledgement that this was hard for everyone, made me appreciate her even more. Work became my refuge in those early weeks of freedom. The promotion came with challenges that actually engaged my brain, problems that could be solved with logic and effort instead of the emotional manipulation I'd grown accustomed to at home. My team respected my input, implemented my suggestions, treated me like the professional I'd forgotten I was. "You're different," Miranda commented during our weekly one-on-one. "More confident. It's good to see." "Just finally focusing on my career without distractions." "Whatever the reason, keep it up. There's talk upstairs about expanding the department. I'll need someone I can trust to help lead it." I threw myself into proving I was that person. I stayed late because I wanted to, not to avoid going home. I proposed new initiatives, streamlined processes, actually used the MBA I'd gotten while Marcus was finding himself. My bank account grew steadily without the constant drain of supporting 2 people on one salary. 3 months into my new life, I ran into Marcus at the grocery store. I was reaching for pasta sauce when I heard his voice behind me. "Sophie?" I turned slowly, taking in his appearance. He looked rough, unshaven, wearing a stained Seahawks jersey, dark circles under his eyes. "Hi, Marcus. You look," he gestured vaguely at me. "Different. Good. You look good." "Thanks. How are you?" He laughed, but it was bitter. "How do you think? My girlfriend left me for my brother. I'm living on Derek's couch. Can't hold down a job because everyone knows my story and thinks I'm pathetic. Marcus, you're the one who's been telling everyone your version of the story." "Because it's true. You cheated on me with James." "We were in an open relationship that you demanded. That's not cheating, that's literally following the rules you set." An older woman pushed past us to get to the marinara, giving us both a disapproving look. I lowered my voice. "We can't do this here, or anywhere, really. We're done, Marcus. You need to accept that and move on." "I can't afford my own place. Did you know that? Even with the job? Which I only have because Uncle Tony feels sorry for me. I can't afford anything decent. Not like your fancy Queen Anne apartment." "That's not my problem anymore." 5 years, Sophie. You threw away 5 years because you wanted to hurt me. No, I threw away 5 years because I finally realized they were already wasted. I put the pasta sauce in my cart. "I have to go." "Wait." He grabbed my arm, not hard, but I still flinched. "Just, can we talk? Really talk? Maybe we could work something out." "There's nothing to work out, Marcus. I could try harder, get a better job, pay you back for some of the stuff you bought me. It's not about money. It never was. Then what? What do you want from me?" I looked at this man I'd once convinced myself I loved, who I'd built up so thoroughly that he'd actually believed his own hype, and felt nothing but pity. "I don't want anything from you, that's the point." I walked away, leaving him standing in the pasta aisle. My hands shook as I finished shopping, but by the time I got to my car, the trembling had stopped. I'd faced him alone and survived. More than survived, I'd stayed strong. James was cooking dinner at my apartment when I got home, music playing from the speaker I'd bought myself as a housewarming gift. He looked up as I entered, his face creasing with concern. "You okay? You look stressed." I ran into Marcus at the store. He set down the spoon he was holding. "How did that go?" "About as well as you'd expect. He grabbed my arm at one point." James's expression darkened. "He what?" "It's fine. He let go, but it was intense." I set the groceries on the counter, letting him pull me into a hug. "He looks terrible." "That's not your responsibility." "I know. It's just strange seeing someone you spent 5 years with fall apart like that." James pulled back to look at me. "You're too good for him. You always were. And I'm not just saying that because I benefit from his stupidity." "His stupidity?" "Letting you go. Treating you like an ATM instead of a partner. Taking you for granted every single day." He turned back to the stove, stirring what smelled like his famous chili. "Although I guess I should thank him. If he hadn't been such an idiot with that open relationship thing, I'd still be watching from the sidelines." Waiting 5 years is a long time to watch from the sidelines. You were worth waiting for. We ate dinner on my actual couch, delivered just the week before, watching a movie Marcus would have complained about. James didn't check his phone once, didn't interrupt to talk about himself, didn't make me feel like my choice in entertainment was somehow a personal failing. It was quietly revolutionary. "Stay," I said as the credits rolled. "Are you sure?" "I know we've been taking things slow." "I'm sure. Stay." He did, and waking up next to someone who actually wanted to be there, who made coffee without being asked and remembered how I took it, felt like a miracle I was still getting used to. The fallout continued for months. Marcus's social media became a rotating slideshow of vague posts about betrayal and moving on, interspersed with photos of him at clubs he couldn't afford, always alone despite the captions suggesting otherwise. Mutual friends reported he'd been banned from 2 dating apps for harassing matches who didn't respond fast enough. "It's sad," my friend Chelsea said over brunch, "but also kind of satisfying. Is that terrible?" "Not terrible," I assured her, sipping my mimosa. "Human." "I never liked him," she confessed. "The way he'd interrupt you, spend your money, act like he was doing you a favor by existing. But you seemed happy, so I didn't want to say anything." "I wasn't happy. I was busy. There's a difference." Well, you seem happy now. James is good for you. He is. I smiled, thinking of how he'd left a note on my coffee maker that morning, reminding me about my big presentation. It's nice being with someone who sees me as a partner, not a parent. The presentation went better than I could have hoped. The executives loved my proposal, approved the budget, and put me in charge of implementation. Miranda pulled me aside afterward, her smile wider than I'd ever seen it. They were impressed. Hell, I'm impressed. Where has this version of you been hiding? She was always here, I said. She just needed room to breathe. Well, keep breathing. There's talk of a VP position opening up next year. I can't make promises, but your name is being mentioned. I floated through the rest of the day on that high, texting James the good news and getting back a string of celebration emojis and a dinner reservation at my favorite restaurant. No jealousy, no making it about him, just pure support. It was everything I'd convinced myself I didn't need when I was with Marcus. Linda called that evening while I was getting ready. Sophia, honey, I hate to bother you, but has Marcus contacted you recently? We ran into each other at the store a few weeks ago, but nothing since. Why? He's been calling me asking for money, says he needs it for a lawyer. A lawyer? For what? He won't say, just keeps muttering about taking back what's his and making things right. She sighed. I didn't give him anything, but I wanted to warn you. Thanks, Linda. I appreciate it. How are you, though? James says the promotion is going well. We chatted for a few more minutes about work, her garden, anything but Marcus. It was a delicate dance we'd all learned, acknowledging the elephant in the room just enough to address necessary issues, then moving on to healthier topics. James picked me up in his reliable Honda, such a contrast to Marcus's flashy leased BMW that had been repossessed 2 months after I stopped making the payments. He'd dressed up, wearing the blue shirt I'd mentioned, brought out his eyes. You look beautiful, he said, and I believed him. Not because I needed the validation, but because he meant it, because he saw me even when I was in sweats with no makeup, because his appreciation wasn't conditional on what I could do for him. Dinner was perfect, right up until dessert when my phone started buzzing incessantly. Unknown number after unknown number. I finally excused myself to the bathroom and answered. Is this Sophia? Sophia Chen? Yes, who is this? This is Rebecca Martinez from Klein & Associates. I'm calling regarding the civil suit filed against you by Marcus Wheeler. My blood ran cold. Civil suit? Yes, ma'am. For breach of verbal contract and intentional infliction of emotional distress. You'll be receiving official paperwork within the week, but my client wanted to give you the opportunity to settle out of court. This is insane. We were in a relationship, not a business partnership. According to my client, you made verbal agreements to provide financial support in exchange for domestic services and companionship, which you then revoked without proper notice or compensation. He's suing me for breaking up with him? The specifics will be in the documentation. If you'd like to discuss settlement terms, I'll be getting my own lawyer. Don't contact me again. I hung up, my hands shaking. This was a new low, even for Marcus. I returned to the table where James was waiting, concern written all over his face. What's wrong? Your brother is suing me. He's what? I explained the phone call, watching James's expression cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally a resigned understanding. He's desperate. Derek kicked him out last week, and Uncle Tony fired him for not showing up. This is his Hail Mary. Can he actually do this? He can try. But Sophia, you documented everything, right? The payments, the apartment, all of it? Everything. I thought of my carefully organized folders, bank statements, receipts, text messages. I have 5 years of evidence that I supported him, not the other way around. Then he doesn't have a case. This is just another manipulation tactic. We finished dessert, but the celebration mood was dampened. James drove me home, staying close as we walked to my door. I'm sorry, he said. For him, for this whole mess. It's not your fault your brother is, I searched for the right word, an entitled narcissist who can't accept consequences? James supplied. Yeah, we've all been thinking it for years. I was going to say troubled, but that works too. He kissed me goodnight. promising to check in tomorrow, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this. As I watched him drive away, I realized that was the biggest difference. With Marcus, every crisis was mine to solve, every problem my responsibility. With James, I had an actual partner. I spent the weekend organizing my documentation, finding a lawyer through my company's legal assistance program, and trying not to panic about what other stunts Marcus might pull. The lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Liu, reviewed everything and actually laughed. "He's suing you for not continuing to pay his bills after a breakup that he initiated by demanding an open relationship?" She shook her head. "I've seen some desperate cases, but this is something special." "So I shouldn't worry?" "Oh, we'll take it seriously. File a countersuit for the money he owes you, get a restraining order if he escalates. But legally, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. This is harassment through the court system, nothing more." "What do you think he actually wants?" Patricia leaned back in her chair. "Money, probably. Or attention. Maybe he thinks if he makes enough noise you'll pay him to go away or take him back just to make it stop. Men like him usually can't accept that they've lost control. I'm not giving him either." "Good. Then we fight. And we document everything. Any contact, any social media posts, any attempts to reach you through third parties. We build a case for harassment and make it clear that actions have consequences." I left her office feeling empowered. Marcus wanted a fight? He'd get one, but it would be on my terms, with my rules, and with the full force of documented truth on my side. The lawsuit paperwork arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered to my office by a process server who looked embarrassed to be there. My coworkers pretended not to notice as I signed for it, but I could feel their curiosity. I waited until lunch to read it in the privacy of my car. It was even more ridiculous than I'd imagined. Marcus was claiming I'd promised to support him while he found his true calling, that I'd agreed to fund his journey of self-discovery, and that by leaving him, I'd caused severe emotional distress, loss of consortium, and damage to his reputation. He was seeking $50,000 in damages plus ongoing support payments. I actually laughed alone in my car, reading his delusional version of our relationship. According to the filing, he'd provided essential household management, emotional support, and social coordination that justified my financial investment. The man who couldn't remember to pay a bill or wash a dish without being reminded 3 times was claiming he'd managed our household. Patricia was equally amused when I sent her the documents. "Oh, this is good. He's actually put in writing that he was financially dependent on you for 5 years. He's made our countersuit for us." We spent the next week crafting our response. Not just a defense, but an offensive strike. We countersued for the $23,000 I could prove I'd loaned him over the years, plus interest. We included every receipt, every bank statement, every text message where he'd promised to pay me back when things turned around. James was my rock through it all, bringing dinner when I worked late on documentation, listening to me vent without trying to fix everything, reminding me that this was temporary. His family was mortified by Marcus's behavior, sending supportive messages and offers to testify if needed. "Mom's ready to disown him," James told me one evening. "She said she didn't raise him to be a leech and she's embarrassed he's her son." That seems harsh. Is it, though? He's suing you for not bankrolling his laziness anymore. That's pretty embarrassing. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, life went on. I excelled at work, my team finishing our project ahead of schedule and under budget. The VP position Miranda had mentioned became official, and I was encouraged to apply. My sister visited with the baby, and we spent a weekend showing her around Seattle, introducing her to James, feeling like a real adult with a real life. Marcus, meanwhile, was spiraling publicly. His social media became increasingly erratic, posts about divine justice and karma mixed with photos of him at expensive restaurants he couldn't afford. Someone sent me a screenshot of him trying to crowdfund for his legal fees, claiming he was a victim of financial abuse and manipulation. Should I be worried? I asked Patricia. Document it all, but no. This actually helps us. He's showing a pattern of instability and false claims. No judge is going to take him seriously. She was right, of course. The day of the hearing arrived gray and drizzly, perfect Seattle weather for ending a chapter of my life. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought myself for the promotion interviews. James drove me to the courthouse, holding my hand in the parking lot. "You've got this," he said, "and I'll be right there in the gallery. Your brother is going to hate you even more for showing up. Good. Maybe he'll finally understand that actions have consequences." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic spaces you see on TV. Marcus was already there with his lawyer, wearing what looked like a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit. He'd cut his hair, probably trying to look responsible, but it just emphasized how much weight he'd lost. "All rise for Judge Chen," the bailiff announced, and I stood, feeling the strange symmetry of sharing a surname with the woman who would decide this ridiculous case. Judge Chen was efficient, no-nonsense, clearly unimpressed with having her time wasted. She reviewed the filings, asked pointed questions, and within 20 minutes, it was clear which way this would go. "Mr. Wheeler," she said, peering over her glasses at Marcus, "you're asking this court to order your ex-girlfriend to continue supporting you financially because you became accustomed to her generosity?" "Your Honor, there was an implied contract." "Was there? Do you have any written agreement, any proof that Miss Chen promised to support you indefinitely?" "Well, no, but nothing. What I see here is a man who was fortunate enough to have a generous partner who supported him for 5 years, while he failed to contribute financially to the relationship. Now that the relationship has ended, at your instigation I might add, you want the court to force her to continue that support. Is that accurate?" Marcus's lawyer tried to interject, but Judge Chen wasn't having it. She turned to me. "Ms. Chen, do you have documentation of the financial support you provided?" Patricia smoothly presented our evidence binders. 5 years of meticulous records, showing not just what I'd spent, but Marcus's promises to repay, his excuses for not working, his expensive tastes funded by my labor. Judge Chen flipped through them, her expression growing more severe with each page. "I've seen enough. Mr. Wheeler, not only am I dismissing your case with prejudice, but I'm granting Ms. Chen's countersuit. You will pay her $23,000 plus interest to be garnished from any wages or assets you acquire. Furthermore, you are ordered to have no contact with Ms. Chen, directly or indirectly. Any violation will result in contempt of court charges." "But, Your Honor, we're done here. Mr. Wheeler, consider yourself fortunate that Ms. Chen didn't pursue fraud charges for your years of false promises to repay these loans. Court is adjourned." It was over that quickly. 5 years dissolved in less than an hour, reduced to a debt Marcus would spend years repaying. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than air, James meeting me on the steps with an umbrella. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said, and meant it. Finally, completely free. We went for coffee to celebrate, sitting in a cozy cafe while the rain pattered against the windows. Patricia called to say she'd file the wage garnishment paperwork immediately, ensuring that any money Marcus earned would partially come to me until the debt was satisfied. "He'll probably never pay it all," she warned, "but at least there's a legal record, and the no-contact order means he can't harass you anymore." "It's not about the money," I told her. "It's about the principle, about making it clear that you can't use people and expect no consequences." That night, James and I cooked dinner together in my kitchen, music playing, wine flowing, the easy rhythm of a life built on mutual respect. I thought about the girl I'd been 5 years ago, so desperate to be loved that I'd accepted being used instead. She deserved better, and finally, she'd gotten it. "I love you," James said suddenly, stirring pasta sauce. "I know it's been a weird journey to get here, but I love you." "I love you too," I said, meaning it in a way I'd never meant it with Marcus. This wasn't desperate or needy or based on who paid for what. This was just love, simple and clean and true. The months that followed were beautifully ordinary. I got the VP position, threw myself into building my department. James's architecture firm landed a major project, and we celebrated with champagne on my balcony. We took weekend trips to the mountains, hosted dinner parties where no one mentioned Marcus, built a life that had nothing to do with the past and everything to do with the future. I heard through the grapevine that Marcus had moved back to his hometown in Oregon, living with his parents while working at a call center. The wage garnishments meant he had to keep a job, couldn't just quit when things got hard. His social media went quiet, the victim narrative apparently harder to maintain when faced with actual consequences. "Do you ever think about him?" James asked one evening, a year after the court date. "Sometimes," I admitted. Not with regret or anger anymore, just puzzlement. How did I let it go on so long? Why did I think that was what love looked like? We all make mistakes. The important thing is learning from them. Have I mentioned lately that I love how you don't try to fix everything? How you just listen and support without making it about you? "Only every day," he laughed, "but I don't mind hearing it." Linda invited us for Thanksgiving, promising that Marcus wouldn't be there. "He's not welcome until he apologizes to both of you and shows he's actually changed," she said firmly. We went, bringing pie and wine, sitting at the table where this whole strange journey had really begun. "I'm so glad you're here," Linda whispered, hugging me. "You're the best thing that happened to our family, even if it came about in the worst way. Thank you for not hating me for the chaos I caused." "Chaos? Honey, you revealed the truth. That's not chaos, that's clarity." The gratitude portion of dinner came around, and when it was my turn, I raised my glass. I'm grateful for second chances, for learning what I'm worth, for finding real partnership, and for a family that welcomed me even when things got complicated. James squeezed my hand under the table. His father nodded approvingly. Linda wiped away a tear. It was perfect in its imperfection, this chosen family that had emerged from the wreckage of a toxic relationship. Later, as we drove home through quiet suburban streets, I thought about transformation. How sometimes the worst things that happen to us become the catalyst for the best things. How Marcus's desperate need for an open relationship had opened my eyes to what I'd been missing. How his inability to see my worth had finally forced me to see it myself. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, glancing over at a red light. "Just life. How it never goes the way you plan, but sometimes that's a good thing." Very philosophical for someone who had 3 glasses of wine. 2.5, I corrected. And I'm serious. If someone had told me 2 years ago that I'd lose Marcus but gain you, that I'd finally have the career I wanted, the apartment I loved, the life I deserved, I wouldn't have believed them. Why not? Because I didn't think I deserved those things. I thought love meant sacrifice, that being needed was the same as being loved, that paying someone's way meant they'd eventually appreciate me. And now? Now I know that love is supposed to add to your life, not drain it. That being appreciated shouldn't be a sometimes thing. That the right person makes you more yourself, not less. We pulled into my apartment complex, but neither of us moved to get out. The conversation felt too important to rush. "I want you to know," James said quietly, "that I see what it cost you to trust again, to open yourself up after what he put you through. I don't take that lightly." "I know you don't. That's why it works." Inside, we settled onto the couch with tea, my head on his shoulder, the comfortable silence of 2 people who don't need to fill every moment with words. My phone buzzed with a notification from my banking app, another garnishment payment from Marcus's wages. $200, steady as clockwork, proof that he was working, and slowly, begrudgingly paying back what he owed. I showed James, who chuckled. "Think he curses your name every time he sees that deduction?" "Probably, but that's his burden to carry, not mine. Look at you, all evolved and healthy." "Therapy helps," I admitted. "So does having an actual partner instead of an overgrown child." "Speaking of partnership," James shifted to face me. "I've been thinking, my lease is up in 2 months and we're together most nights anyway. How would you feel about making it official?" "You want to move in together?" "Only if you're ready. No pressure. I just think it might be nice to stop living out of overnight bags." I thought about it, the natural progression of a healthy relationship. No ultimatums, no financial desperation, just 2 people choosing to build something together. "I'd like that," I said. "But we split everything fairly. No assumptions, no resentment. We talk about money openly and honestly." "Agreed. And we both do chores without being asked 3 times. Revolutionary concept." We spent the rest of the evening planning, discussing logistics like adults who respected each other. It was so different from how things had started with Marcus, when he'd gradually moved in without asking, leaving his stuff until it seemed easier to just let him stay, contributing nothing while taking everything. 2 years later, as I stood in front of our families and friends, exchanging vows with James in Linda's beautiful backyard, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The pain of those final months with Marcus, the shock of him wanting an open relationship, the unexpected joy of finding real love in the rubble of a toxic situation. Marcus wasn't there, of course. Still persona non grata with his family, still paying off his debt $200 at a time, still living with the consequences of his choices. I'd heard he was in therapy now, working on himself for real this time. I hoped it was true, that he'd find his own path to being better. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was the man standing in front of me, promising to be my partner in all things. The friends surrounding us who'd supported me through the darkness. The family who'd chosen me, even when it meant choosing sides. The career that flourished when I finally had energy to invest in it. The life I'd built on my own terms. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant said, and James kissed me like we had all the time in the world, because we did. At the reception, Linda pulled me aside, tears in her eyes. "I need to tell you something," she said. "The day Marcus brought you home, I thought this girl is too good for him, but I hoped you'd help him grow up. I'm sorry for that. You deserved better from all of us." "I got better," I reminded her, gesturing toward James, who was laughing with his cousins. "Just took the long way around." "Still, thank you for not giving up on our family when we gave you every reason to." "You're my family now," I said simply. "That's what family does." As the night wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself on the same patio where James and I had first connected all those years ago. So much had changed, but the important things remained. Love, respect, partnership, the things I'd thought I was getting with Marcus but had truly found with James. Sarah appeared beside me, baby on her hip, toddler running circles around the garden. "You look happy," she observed. "I am happy." "Good. You wasted enough years being miserable. It's nice to see you finally getting what you deserve." "It's nice to finally believe I deserve it," I corrected. She hugged me carefully, mindful of my dress. "I'm proud of you, Sophia, for leaving, for fighting back, for not letting him drag you down with him. It takes strength to rebuild your life like that." "It takes good people," I said, watching James help his elderly grandmother to her car. "And therapy, lots of therapy." We laughed, the easy laugh of sisters who've seen each other through the worst and celebrated the best. The band was playing our last song, and James appeared to claim his dance, spinning me under the stars in his mother's garden where this unlikely love story had truly begun. "No regrets?" he asked as we swayed. "None," I said honestly. "Every mistake, every wasted year, every dollar spent on someone who didn't deserve it, it all led here. How can I regret the path that brought me to you?" "When you put it that way. Besides," I added, "I hear the best revenge is living well." "And I'd say we're doing pretty well." "The garnishment payments don't hurt either," he teased. "Those are just a bonus. The real victory is this, us, our life, our future. Everything he said I'd never have without him. Turns out you just needed to lose him to have it all. Funny how that works." As the song ended and our guests applauded, I caught sight of our reflection in the patio doors. A successful woman in a dress she'd bought herself, standing next to a man who saw her as an equal, surrounded by people who loved them both. It was everything I'd wanted when I was pouring my life into someone who gave nothing back, everything I'd been told I was too demanding for expecting. Marcus had been wrong about so many things, but he'd been right about one. I was different. Different from the girl who'd accepted crumbs and called them a feast. Different from the woman who'd confused being used with being useful. Different from the person who'd believed love meant sacrificing everything while receiving nothing in return. That Sophia had died somewhere between the open relationship proposal and the courthouse steps. And the woman who'd taken her place? She was magnificent, successful, loved, respected, and partnered with someone who matched her energy instead of draining it. The party wound down, guests departing with hugs and well wishes. As James and I made our final rounds, thanking everyone for coming, I felt the profound satisfaction of a life well lived. Not perfect, but honest. Not without struggle, but without settling. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Wheeler?" James asked, and I laughed at the irony of sharing that name again, but in such a different context. "Ready," I said, taking his hand. Home was our apartment now, filled with furniture we'd chosen together, bills we split fairly, chores we both did without complaint. It was peaceful in a way my life with Marcus had never been, free from the constant underlying tension of imbalance and resentment. As I hung up my dress and removed my makeup, I thought about the girl who'd sat across from Marcus in that restaurant 3 years ago, watching him propose an open relationship while wearing a watch she'd bought him. She'd thought she was trapped, that 5 years of investment meant she had to keep throwing good money after bad. She'd thought being needed was better than being alone. How wrong she'd been, and how grateful I was for her mistakes, for the path they'd set me on, for the lessons they'd taught me about my own worth. James appeared in the bathroom doorway. "Penny for your thoughts?" "Just thinking about how much commission Marcus paid for our happiness. 5 years of my life, thousands of dollars, and one spectacularly bad idea that set everything in motion." "Most expensive matchmaking service ever," James agreed. "Think we should send him a thank you card?" "Let's not push it. The garnishment payments are probably reminder enough." We went to bed laughing, wrapped in the simple pleasure of inside jokes and shared understanding. Outside, Seattle hummed with its usual energy, but inside our home, everything was calm. No drama, no financial stress, no wondering when the other shoe would drop. Just peace, partnership, and the promise of all the tomorrows we'd build together. 3 years ago, Marcus had asked for freedom to explore. He'd gotten it, though probably not in the way he'd imagined. And in losing him, I'd found my own freedom. The freedom to be successful without apology, to expect equal partnership, to love and be loved without keeping score. The open relationship had closed, but what it had opened, doors to self-discovery, to real love, to the life I deserved, would stay open forever. And for that unexpected gift, wrapped in the ugly paper of Marcus's selfishness, I was genuinely, profoundly grateful. Love wasn't supposed to be that hard. It just took me 5 years and one catastrophically bad boyfriend to figure that out. But once I did, well, that's when my real story began.